right, good morning and welcome to the 2026 Public Services Notice of Funding Availability Pre-Application Conference. Like I said, we're going to be recording this meeting. We'll have the slides available. If you do have questions, we ask that you hold them until the end. At the end, you can either pop them in the chat or you can also raise your hand and we'll, you can verbally ask them at the end as well. We'll just have some time then. So hold your questions to the end and we'll start giving you the content today. So one thing I'm going to say is I'm Lindsay Broom. I'm a staff analyst here. I work with the NOFA team. So I'm kind of your point of contact for all things NOFA related. Any questions you may have, that will be me. And I'll also be guiding you through this presentation today. I have the public service team is here, as well as some of our compliance personnel. So as we move through the slides, you will be hearing from them as well. Yep, and as you can see, there's that question and answer section at the end. Right. So the first thing I want to talk about is our solicitation schedule. The NOFA was issued on Friday. Hopefully you've had time to review it to some degree. Review it to some degree before our meeting so that you can come with your questions. Today is a pre-application conference where we discuss the NOFA, its contents, and what we're looking for in terms of requirements and scoring. And then there's a question submittal deadline of July 29th, and that would be 5 p.m. on that day. So the reason that we have a deadline for questions is because all questions that are asked are the answers and the questions are published in a letter of clarification. So we set a deadline so that we have time to collect all the questions, answer them, and then make sure that they're published before the August 11th due date. So just be aware that all the questions that you ask will be published publicly and that you need to submit them by July 29th. That doesn't mean if you have a question, if you're in our portal trying to, submit your application, you have a technical question, you can ask that beyond the July 29th deadline. What we mean for that deadline is questions related to the actual NOFA, specifically related to, maybe requirements or scoring, or things like that of that nature. But, technical questions you can ask at any time. The deadline is August 11th, 2026 at 5 p.m. And we'll discuss later how to apply and, the portal that we use and all those things will be in later slides. Okay, so the first section we have, I'm going to turn it over to our public services team, Melody and Jared, and take it away, guys.
Hi, for those who don't know me, my name is Melody Barr. I am the Assistant Director over our Public Services Division here at the City of Houston's Housing and Community Development Department. I am joined by Jared Briggs, our Division Manager, and we are going to talk to you a little bit about this funding opportunity, as well as some of the requirements to help you prepare an application that is best and that is competitive. So we look forward to that. All right, next slide. So the funding, the maximum amount of funding available for this 2026 Public Services NOFA is approximately $10.3 million, and this is for a period of 24 months. Now this money and this funding consists of CDBG entitlement grant at $2.9 million and a set aside of that CDBG amount, or in addition to that amount, for ESG match, which is another $1 million. We also have Emergency Solutions Grant. This is another entitlement fund. This is $2 million. And then we have our Homeless Housing Services Program, or we like to talk in acronyms, HHSP. This comes from the state of Texas, $750,000. And then we have $3.5 million in Home American Rescue Plan Grant, or Home ARP. Now, in the application, agencies will select which funding sources is most appropriate for their projects from those listed, and the ESG match will be assigned by the city as applicable. But please note that the city will have the final determination on how those funds are awarded. The term of the resulting agreements will be for a 1-year period, which is 12 months, with an option for an additional 1-year renewal, an additional 12 months at the discretion of our department. Next slide. Now, the overview of the scope, as part of the city's in-street homeless action plan, a coordinated investment in public services as part of the mayor's initiative to in-street homeless for Houston residents. This is all part of the scope. The target populations that we're interested in funding are individuals experiencing homelessness, those at risk of homelessness, or those living with intellectual developmental disabilities, IDD. Eligible service areas include transportation, healthcare, housing, rehousing, mental health, case management, homelessness prevention, legal aid, housing counseling, employment, substance abuse counseling, job training, education, childcare, and workforce development. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is to give you an idea of those eligible service areas. All activities must benefit a majority of low to moderate income persons. These are individuals that are below 80% AMI. Funded through the 4 sources, again, CDBG, ESG, HHSP, and Home ARP, each with the distinct eligible activities, which we will be detailing in the following slides. So under CDBG, this is one of our most most open, if you will, lenient type of funding streams. Again, there's strings in every single category. So these activities must meet a national objective, benefiting persons at or below 80% area median income. So eligible public services, we talked a little bit about that. It was that list that I just went over, and that's also listed there. All services must serve individuals experiencing or at risk of homelessness or individuals with IDD.
1 second, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, got it.
Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG. So all services must serve individuals experiencing or at risk of homelessness. And you will be able to read this in the NOFA. So hopefully you have that NOFA downloaded and you have it available so you can look at the definitions. Street outreach is an activity, and that includes engagement, case management, emergency health, mental health services, transportation services for special populations. Emergency shelter, essential services for shelter residents or shelter operation costs. Homelessness prevention are for those that are at risk of homelessness. This is category 2 within the city of Houston city limits. With incomes below 30% area median income, covers housing relocation, stabilization services, financial assistance, case management, short-term rental assistance, and rental arrears. Rapid rehousing has the same eligible activities as prevention. This is relocation, stabilization services, financial assistance, case management, short-term rent assistance, and rental arrears. And then we have HMIS, which is our data contribution. HMIS leads management costs and or comparable database costs for victim services or legal providers. HHSP, Homeless Housing Services Program. This funds Texas municipalities with populations of 285,500 plus individuals that are homeless for homeless prevention and homeless services. So we are one of 9 cities that receive this fund from the state. This is actually funded through TDHCA to us. There's 2 set-aside amounts that we have. We have the general set-aside and the youth set-aside. The youth funds are restricted up to the ages of 24 years old. Eligible activities include direct services for case management for homeless persons or those at risk of homelessness, essential services for homeless persons or those at risk of homelessness, and operations of emergency day or night shelters. We have Home ARP, American Rescue Plan funds, support services for individuals and families meeting one or more of the HUD's qualifying populations. So please refer to Notice CPD 2110. Eligible activities include the short, medium-term financial assistance, rent, rental arrears, application fees, security deposits, last month's rent, utility deposits, payments, moving costs. Housing support, this is landlord-tenant liaison, mediation, legal services, credit repair. income stabilization, life skill training, childcare, transportation, food, employment assistance, job training, education services, and health services, mental health, outpatient, and substance use treatment. Qualifying populations are eligible, and eligibility requirements by funding source are detailed in attachment B of the NOFA. I'm now going to turn it over to Jared Briggs so he can talk a little bit about the threshold items.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Yes, the threshold items. So these are the items that after you submit your application, that you will be, if you do not meet these minimum requirements, then the application will not proceed for full evaluation. And I believe Lindsay will go into that a little bit further, like how that process works later on in the presentation. But some of the key threshold items that you need to be aware of. So T1, federal funds, we're not allowed to work with anyone that is debarred, suspended, or excluded from federal, state, or local programs. So if you do not already have a SAM, System for Award Management, sam.gov account, you will need one of those. And we have to verify that your agency is not debarred through that. Plus, there's the state of Texas debarment check, and the city of Houston has its own debarment program now that we must verify that you're not listed on that webpage. Taxes, you have to be current on all your city taxes and any loans or other programs and be in good standing with the city of Houston. You must also have proof of your current franchise tax account. Provide that status from the Texas Comptroller. If you are a nonprofit that is applying, you must provide proof that you have your current 501c3 status. We need to be able to verify that you are registered with the IRS and that you are eligible as a nonprofit. This application is, I believe, also open to units of local government. They can also apply, so either a nonprofit or unit of local government. So T5, you must operate and serve residents within the city of Houston city limits. If you're not familiar with the city limits of Houston, that is, you can find that online, or if you need to, we can submit a letter or a request asking for that, and a link can be shared. But the city has the city limits. There's also what are known as limited purpose annexation areas. We do count those as part of the eligible area that we can serve. You do need to, that does not mean that your program has to be, well, this is where we're going to get into funding sources. It's going to depend on what funding source we're using. CDBG, you need to be located within the city of Houston city limits, the actual where your location where you're going to be serving, as well as HHSP. ESG, because it is primarily, for homeless individuals, there's a little bit more flexibility as long as you are serving individuals from the city of Houston. Number 6, the CDBG funds, as Melody said, that is our least restrictive pot of funding, and you do have to meet the national objectives under public services. The big one with CDBG is we have to meet the majority of the persons served have to be under 80% of area median income. And if you're not familiar with what that is, that can be found on HUD's website. You can just do a simple search for, Houston HUD area median income. Those limits are updated annually by HUD based on household size. The other thing with CDBG is we have to serve one of the national objectives. And normally for most of our public services, that's called low mod clientele. So you'll have to have documentation that'll be maintained that shows that these individuals meet the income standard, and then particularly the populations that we are prioritizing, those with IDD or homeless individuals. So that goes into number 7. So in your scope, it needs to be clear. So if you're doing your project is primarily health services or transportation or something, that needs to be tied back to serving one of these populations. It's not just, it needs to be, for example, we are not looking for standalone childcare programs with this NOFA. If you are doing a homeless services project and one of the activities is to provide childcare for individuals that are homeless, or that you are assisting out of homelessness through your activities, that is what we are expecting. It would be part of a larger project. Number 8. So if you're not familiar, federal funds, we have what's called the 2025 through 2029 consolidated plan, and that is the city's goals. It's a 5-year plan that's required by HUD. It sort of lays out what our plans and goals are for the next 5 years. And then each year, the city has to do what's called the annual action plan. So we have a pending HUD approval, the 2026-2027 annual action plan. That lists what projects and the amount of funding that we anticipate to have available and the goals of the different populations that we're looking to serve. So the projects that we pick have to tie back to the goals and objectives in the action plan and the consolidated plan. Number 9, the evidence of site control required for full agreement terms. So what we're looking for here is if you are proposing a project and you have a location, we need to know that, okay, once you're selected, that you will be able to stay in that location, because there's a lot that goes into when we evaluate these applications on accessibility, where your project is located. So if you have, a location that you say, I'm going to serve individuals, at 123 Main Street, but then 6 months into the program, your lease expires and you need to move, that alters the expectations of, what we approved. And so we just need proof that you're going to be able to stay in that location for the term of the agreement. The funding caps, there's already been some questions about that. So the minimum is we are looking for applications that are at least $250,000 or higher. For non-homeless services, the floor is $250,000, and the cap, if you are a non-homeless service project such as IDD, would be a maximum of $500,000, and those caps apply for a 12-month period. So anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 for non-homeless projects. And then if you are looking at proposing a project related to serving homeless individuals, we have not put a cap on that, but you have seen the total amount of funding available. That is the maximum amount we have available. That does not mean that we will fund all the way up to that and every single penny. There are other projects and renewals that are currently underway. So that is just the maximum amount of potential funding. Number 11. So all agencies have to have a minimum of 90 days of operating reserves for their proposed project. So we need to see bank statements or a line of credit or some other documentation that's explained in the NOFA that shows that you have operating funds to cover a minimum of 90 days of operations, because we operate on a reimbursement basis. All selected projects will be submitted, and once funded, you will submit a payment packet request to us on a monthly basis, and it can take 45 to 60 days from submission before you may receive payment. So that is why you need to have adequate operating capital to float the operations until you are reimbursed. And of course, if there's any delays or missing documentation, that can slow the process down.
And if I can just
12,
clarify right here on T11, because we get a lot of questions on this particular threshold requirement. So if you're like, I'm going to ask for $1 million, and you put that in your application, you're asking for $1 million, then we want to be able to see that $250,000 that you have as working capital in a designated account specifically for this program. So if you don't have that and we cannot verify that, your project will not pass threshold and it will not be reviewed. So that could also limit the amount of money that you're applying for when you think about this application.
Yeah, and like Melody said, that's not just your overall operations, it's specifically for this project. Do you have funding set aside? And that ties into number 12, where we need your board to certify. We need proof that you have that adequate cash flow reserve for the project. Not that it's, your agency's general operating fund. And yeah, we have enough, but really other programs are going to be touching that. So that's why we require that board certification to go along with that 90-day operating capital proof. And then number 13 and 14, these are new items that we haven't had specifically in previous NOFAs. So I'm going to take a moment to provide a little more guidance on these. We live in Houston. It's a very disaster-prone area. If you're not aware, if you're new here, floods, hurricanes, droughts. We get all kinds of stuff. So we are asking that agencies need to provide, and we have not set like specific criteria, but you need to have something that you are titling as a disaster operations plan and a continuity of operations plan. So these sound similar and they kind of go hand in hand, but disaster operations plan is going to be, how are you going to handle things during the disaster? How are you going to either, if you have a shelter, how are you going to serve clients and how are you going to take care of your staff? Do you have a plan to relocate them if there's flooding? Do you have like connections or with other agencies or with Harris County or the City of Houston operations of emergency management? What is your plan? Like this is like the tactical plan for how you're going to keep your operations going and your people safe during a disaster. The continuity of operations plan is kind of a larger plan. That is how are you going to continue operating, say, not only through disaster, but post-disaster. So say your building is damaged. What is your plan? Are you going to relocate? Do you have a backup site? Can you continue to serve? Or are you going to need to shut down? So that is where you will tell us, what is your agency's plan for long term should there be a disaster and so there is some disruption. And also, what about your leadership? If something were to happen to the leadership, kind of what is the plan? Who's going to be in charge? Or if people are unavailable? Sometimes during disaster, those that are the normal decision makers may be cut off. They may be out of town. They may be unable to access. So, what is the backup plan? So we want you to explain that because we do have a lot of disasters, like I said here, and, we never know when the power may go out. There could be a hurricane, there could be a flood, it could just be a random thunderstorm, and suddenly, your building has a lightning strike and a fire, or something like that. So please, when you submit those, clearly say which one, title it as your disaster operations plan, and the other one as your continuity of operations plan. And, feel free to, if you need more guidance, you can submit questions. Of course, there's a lot of information online too, where you can just research those two topics to give you some guidance. All right, scoring. So this NOFA has a maximum of 100 points per application. So we've got it broken up by these various categories and the total amount of points that you can receive, the maximum. Organizational management, I'll just explain each one. It's covered in the NOFA, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask or submit a question through the NOFA email if you have something later on that you think of and you need clarification. So the organizational management, we're looking at the agency's administrative structure, your staffing plan, what is your operational readiness to manage the proposed project? So what staff do you already have? What staff do you need to hire? Do you have vacancies? Do you have the front end program staff to do what you're proposing to do? And also, do you have the back end? Because, you need to have the right finance people, accountants. You have to have the people that can submit all that documentation that we need to give you that timely reimbursement. So we're going to be evaluating that, and we need that to be explained to us through like a narrative, the org chart, kind of how are your daily operations going to work. The activity need and justification, that's a max of 15. So that's going to tell us, why do we need, what is the driving need for your project, what niche or population are you going to serve? Where is there a gap in services that your agency can, fill that void to serve individuals? And how do you plan to deliver those services to the residents of the city of Houston? Data-driven evaluation. So we are looking for how are you going to use data to monitor the performance and improve services of your project? Are you going to, for example, are you going to have some kind of metrics that you track? Are you going to have survey data that you get back from clients to inform you, you did a good job, you didn't? What is the methodology? How are you going to, adjust and improve the program as it goes on? Because, we all know that sometimes what we think is going to happen and how we start, reality sometimes, weighs in and says, nope, that's not how it's going to go. And we have to make changes. So how are you going to handle that? The scoring item number 4, targeted services. So that's going to look at how you're going to really focus on the clients that you're serving. How are you going to engage them? What population with this grant, with this application, what population are you targeting? And then what service delivery model, depending on if this is a homeless services project, what methods are you going to use to engage with individuals? Are there best practices that are like industry or recognized that you will be using? Cost reasonableness. So we're going to be looking at your budget and the narrative of what you're proposing. Does it make sense? Do the staff cost and the unit costs for supplies or whatever that you're proposing, are those within normal, expected ranges? We do have a lot of information with agencies that we work with, like say case managers. So we kind of know what the general range of salaries are for staff. So are things, just within normal parameters. So also, are you asking for things that are tied to what you're doing? While we all know that we all love, like I love coffee, we're not going to approve, you buying like a $5,000 espresso machine or something. That's not reasonable for our program to pay for. The budget effectiveness. So guys, it goes hand in hand with the cost reasonableness. So again, this is where you're going to explain how the budget supports your program. So the budget that you're going to fill out with the line items, we expect that to tie back to the narrative of the, what you're doing and the org chart. So if you've got, a program manager, 4 staff, 2 support staff, and, and then an accountant and something on your org chart, we expect to see if you want us to pay for them, they need to be in the budget. These things should match. There should be the same number of staff. You also need to explain how much is our grant going to cover? Are they going to work 100% on our program and be, that you're requesting funding for, which means that they only work on, say, a CDBG project, or is it 50%, half their time? That has to be clear and tie back to, what you're proposing. So we're looking for consistency through everything that you submit for the org chart, for the, the scope, the budget, the reasonableness. Does this all flow and make sense? And we don't identify anything that stands out and says, oh, you've got 5 people in the budget, but you only talk about 3 that you're actually going to, serve. 3 people are going to be working on your program. Why is there a mismatch? The experience and past performance. So that's pretty straightforward. Tell us, what is your experience in serving this population? Does it meet your agency's mission? How long has your agency been around? What have you done in the past? What experience have you done to serve this population and this type of project that you're proposing? Provide examples of like similar services that you've operated in the past, and if you have any outcomes or metrics that you are able to share for your past projects, those are always helpful.
And I think that's really key. I think that's really key, particularly if you are applying for something that is almost like a renewal where you want us to continue funding. We're going to need to see the data, like prove to us why this investment is necessary and is important. And it goes back to that data-driven evaluation. So they are going to go hand in hand with each other. What are the outcomes? What is it that is being collected? And it's not necessarily what you're reporting to us as part of your contract in the past. It could be what you've reported to yourselves as an entity, what your agency is saying this is appropriate, because even your agency has to do an evaluation on whether or not programs should continue. So when we look at that experience and past performance, it's all of what Jared said, and then back it up with your data.
And I do want to, Lindsay just posted, there's a slight typo under experience and past performance on the slide. That should be 10 points. That is what's in the NOFA. So disregard, or we'll update the slide before it gets posted, that this should be 10 points for that section, not 7 points. All right. Leverage. So there are leveraging contribution. So ESG does have a match requirement, an actual 1-to-1 match requirement per HUD. So if you are applying for ESG funding, we do expect you to explain what other funding you would be providing and proof of that leverage. So the scoring criteria is broken down, but to get max points, we would expect you to have at least 150% match. But a minimum, it's preferred you have at least 100% match. Otherwise, tell us, are you going to need other funds? Because we do have some CDBG set aside specifically for match purposes. The other is if we're just looking for overall leveraging contribution for your project. So if you're asking for, your project to be 100% funded by the city and you have no leverage at all of any other source, then, that you're going to get less points. You're going to get a lower score.
Get 0 points.
Yeah, pretty much 0 if you're 100% us and not asking or providing any staff time or any match or at all. And, and that can be, you have some, maybe unrestricted funding and some of your, back of house staff that does the payment packet review or, payroll or something that they're covered, put that in there. If they're not going to be paid directly by the grant, but they're going to help and assist on it, that is leverage. So don't miss that. And also, if you are, I want to say on the budget, if you are saying you only want us to pay 50% of a staff person's time with our funds, the budget needs to account for the other 50% of their time. That funding needs to be listed. What else? It doesn't have to be, we have a column that says it's not associated with the program. It might be a completely different grant or something they work on, but we need to show, like, if they're a 1 FTE, how much is our time? How much is covered by something else? Because then it balances out with like the whole annual amount of, say, their salary. Otherwise, we have this difference that shows up in the budget. If, say, they make $75,000 a year, but you're only accounting for $50,000 through our program. The next one, accessible location. So that is pretty straightforward. We're going to put you, provide the address of where the services are going to be provided, and then we're going to look at where it is within the city and what are the surrounding features. Is there a either light rail or bus line through Metro or some other bus stop? If it's homeless services, we also have our Project Access bus. Is it near one of those stops? Is it, if it's not immediately within, are you close to within like a half a mile of other public transportation? Or do you have a transportation plan? Does your agency have a bus, van, or some other method that is part of your application that explains how you plan to get clients to and from your location as needed? Or are you also doing virtual? It just needs to be clearly explained. And then the last one, agency collaboration, for a maximum of 5 points. So what partnerships are you, do you have that go with the proposed program that will enhance the services you're providing to the clients? You need to describe those partnerships to us. So we expect to see like an executed MOA or MOU or some other similar document that's dated within the last 12 months from the date of submission. I believe, is that what we did, Lindsay? Was it 12 months or did we say 6 months on this one?
Sorry, I'm unmuting myself. I think we said that it couldn't be expired. We didn't give a date. It just said it had to be active.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
it's typically 12 months, but yes, we don't want if you have an agency collaboration from like 5 years ago, that's probably not the best. Even though there's not an expiration date, at what point does your organization actually review your collaborations, your MOUs, and do you have a system that updates it? I will tell you that if I see a letter that's like 5 years old without anything recent, it's just gonna send up flags. And I will also say that as Jared is going through this scoring criteria, you're going to have there, and Lindsay will talk more about the process, the evaluation, all that kind of stuff. But you're going to have people who will be evaluating this, and they're going to be reading all of the applications that come through. And so if there is information you want us to know, you're going to need to put that into your application. The team is not going to necessarily go and Google search your location to figure out if you're an accessible location. That is part of your application, and the responsibility of the applicant to let us know exactly what this program looks like, what elements this program has. You're putting your best application forward to be most competitive. All right, I think next slide, or I think now we're gonna go.
Yeah, I think now we're in compliance. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say on that, the key word on those agency collaborations, the relevant to your proposed project, because I will say in our experience in the past, we've had some individuals submit 10, 15 letters of support, or they have collaborations, but they're in no way relevant to what they're proposing to do, or at least if we don't see the relevancy, please explain how it is relevant if it's not obvious to what you're proposing. So if you need to add a short narrative or something to that collaboration section, that's fine. We just need to understand how that collaboration will work with what you're proposing. So on to compliance.
Yeah, and like Jared said, there is an agency collaboration narrative as well as the documentation that you provide for agency collaboration. So in that narrative, talk about the relationship that you have with the partners that you include in the letters of support or the MOUs. Yeah, okay. So I will talk about it later, what Melody was talking about, some tips and things that you can do to, help your score and have a good application. But first, let's do compliance. First up, we have Lakeisha Tates to talk about pay or play.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear and see the presentation on the screen. I am Lakeisha Tates, the staff analyst with the Housing Community Development Department, the Compliance and Grants Administration Division, and this morning I'll be providing the compliance requirements for the City of Houston's Pay or Play program for the 2026 Public Service NOFA Application Conference. Next slide, please. So the City of Houston's Pay or Play program is governed by Executive Order 1 through 7. And for you who are not familiar with the City of Houston program, it do mandate contractors to provide employees a minimum level of healthcare benefits or contribute a designated amount to the contractor's responsibility fund. Now, the City of Houston's Pay or Play program applies to contracts where the total city expenditure, including your contingencies, amendments, submittal terms, and change order, equals or exceeds $100,000. For subcontracts, it'll be where your total subcontract value, including your contingencies, amendments, submittal terms, and change orders, equals or exceeds $2,000. Next slide, please. So what will consider you a pay or play covered employee? For the City of Houston's Pay or Play program, it will apply to employees of covered contractor or a subcontractor, including your contract laborers who are over the age of 18, work at least 30 hours per week for that employer, and work any amount of time under a covered city contract or subcontract will be considered a covered employee. Next slide. So successful awardees who choose how they will participate in the City of Houston's Pay or Play program must comply with the selected participation option through the term of your contract. So if a contractor elects to pay PAY, that option, that contractor will pay to the city $1 for each work performed by a covered employee within a 40-hour work week. This is including your covered employees of covered subcontractors on a city contract. And keep in mind, these funds are deposited into the Contract Responsibility Fund, which is used to support the Crisis Call Diversion Program and the Client Access Program. These programs are preventive and mental health care related services that is provided to uninsured persons in the Houston area. Next slide. If a contractor elects to play PLY option, the contractor will provide documentary proof in form acceptable to Housing Community Development Team that it provides healthcare benefits to each covered employee, and that covered employee of covered subcontractors are provided healthcare benefits. The healthcare benefits must meet the City of Houston standards, which says the employer contributes no less than 75% of the total premium cost per covered employee per month toward the total premium cost. And the covered employee contribution, if any amount, is no greater than 25% of the total monthly premium cost. And this is single healthcare coverage. Next slide, please. The Office of Business Opportunity, who administers the City of Houston Pay or Play program, provides pay or play related guidance, forms, and updates through their website at www.houstonTX.gov/OBO/popforms.html. This concludes the City of Houston Housing Community Development Real Estate Compliance requirements for the 2026 Public Service NOFA, and we look forward to working with the successful awardees, and good luck to everyone.
Thank you, Lakeisha. Up next, we have Complaints and Appeal with Chris Robinson. Chris, are you on?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good deal. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Again, hello everyone. I am Chris Robinson. I'm with the Complaints and Appeals team, and I am going to just run through quickly the complaint process, and then I'll dive more into the appeals process. So a complaint with us is generally any issue or grievance that you will have about an HCD operation. It could be we're taking too long to process something, or you just haven't received an update. Maybe you have issues with how we're running a program, and the requirements. Or maybe there's a conflict of interest that you feel like an employee has, or another vendor, or even yourself. So you can file a complaint with us. Generally, we'll respond within writing in 15 days. That's 15 calendar days. But it depends on what the complaint is. Sometimes we'll have to extend it, and the response time will be a little bit longer. Now, an appeal is specific to a program determination. So this would be in the case of a NOFA, I was not awarded, and now I would like to appeal that decision because I believe I had the best application. You can appeal for that. Typically, our appeals, we will respond within 30 days. And it is also in writing, but for NOFAs, we will respond within 7 business days, and I'll get into the timeline a little bit further down. Next slide, please. Okay, so the complaints and appeals, who can file a complaint and appeal, it varies based on the actual grievance type. So a complaint can be filed by anybody within the city of Houston, or not even the city of Houston. It could be literally anybody. So any person that's a member of the public, a senator, maybe the mayor himself could file a complaint. But an appeal, it will only be limited to those program applicants and our participants. So if you're not applying, you won't be able to appeal on someone else's behalf, but a complaint you can file on someone else's behalf. The filing requirements for both grievance types is we'll need your first and last name, give us your address, a good working phone number, and it's optional if you want to provide an email, if you want us to correspond with you that way. I know that's a lot faster, but we will also correspond by phone and also by mail. We definitely need the name of the project or the NOFA solicitation that you're appealing about and the specific reason. Next slide, please. So for an appeal, there are only 3 reasons why you can appeal a NOFA. So you can appeal because you did not receive an award at all. Maybe you did receive an award, but you believe that the award should be increased. So you have a concern about the calculation of the award. And the third one is unresponsiveness. So this only applies to applicants that did not meet the minimum threshold and were failing to respond to each scoring criterion. So if you just missed the deadline to submit your application, that is a non-appealable ground. So these are the only 3 options that you have. So just be mindful of that when you're submitting your appeal. And the appeal request also, must be in writing. Next slide, please. Now here's the timeline. So applicants will have 5 business days to file an appeal after you have received your determination or the date of your determination letter. And you have to file that appeal again in writing with all of those necessary components that I discussed previously. Generally, we will acknowledge your appeal within 1 business day. It could be same day, and sometimes it may be a little bit longer depending on our backlog, but generally within 24 to 48 hours, we'll let you know if your appeal request has been accepted. Then you will have 5 calendar days from the date of your determination letter to submit any supporting documents that you have to buttress your case. And then HCD, from the date that we accepted your appeal, we have 7 business days to conduct a tier 1 or tier 2 appeal. And so just for your knowledge, we have a 2-tier process. So the first tier, you'll be appealing to the actual program area. If you disagree with that determination, then you can appeal again, and a third-party, non-biased group of employees will review the appeal from top to bottom and figure out what the determination should be, if it should be granted or approved. Now, there's a caveat to the 7 business days. If by chance there's some legal matter that we were not able to resolve ourselves without involving our legal department, we will send that matter on to the legal department. And so it can take up to 7 to 20 business days. That doesn't typically happen, but we try to get you a response as quickly as possible. Next slide. Okay, here is our contact information, which you should also be able to see here. If you need to give us a call for any reason, just call our main hotline number, 832-394-6200, and hit option 1. You can also email us at hcddcomplaints@houston.houston.tx.gov, and there is no S on appeals. And of course, you can always visit us in person or mail us something in. Just be mindful of the mailing time frame. You know, it typically takes about 3 days for us to receive mail. So on NOFAs, we're on a time crunch, so it would be easier for you to come in person or call us or email us. And with that, I will turn it back over to Lindsay. Thank you guys, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, like Chris said, just pay attention to the dates. So if you receive your letter, you need to, and you have like your determination letter, and you have an intention to appeal, just make sure you do that as soon as possible. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is walk you through how to get to the NOFA, how to submit it, and then I'm going to go through some things you should know type information. So I'm assuming that if you are on the call that you've already gotten the link to the pre-application conference. But if for some reason you haven't seen the actual NOFA solicitation, those things usually go hand in hand. I'm going to show you how to do that. There's several different ways, but probably the easiest one is to go to our HoustonTX.gov housing/funding site, and you can look like if there's a featured NOFA, any NOFA that's open is featured. So if there's a NOFA that's open and accepting applications, it will be, if you click that featured NOFA available, it'll appear. So in this case, we have this one open. We have another 2, so just make sure you're going to the correct one. This is the 2026 Public Services NOFA. And this is where we'll also post the pre-application conference recording and the slide deck here. But now we have transitioned over to a Beacon bid portal to receive applications. So yes, you can look at all this, kind of high level information on our site, but to actually download the documents and submit, you need to click that View NOFA and move over to the Beacon bid site. I did put that Beacon bid site in the chat. You can go directly there. You don't actually have to go to our website. You can go to Beacon bid. You can actually go to the city, our Strategic Procurement Division website, SPD, and get to the Beacon bid link there as well. So the Beacon bid is where the entire city posts their solicitations. So not just NOFAs, there's also RFPs, RFQs, any type of procurement that the city is doing will be in Beacon bid. So that may be of interest to you if you want to do business with the city. So this is our landing page in Beacon bid for the Public Services NOFA. It has all the attachments that you need. Many of you are asking about the action plans, the consolidated plan. It's all there in this download package. So when you're submitting, the first thing you do, and this goes this will also tie into how to download the package. So you have to sign up with Beacon Bid to download the package. The first thing is you click on this purple box, this get on the interest list. That is basically signing up for Beacon Bid or registering with Beacon Bid. When you click on that, it brings up this box. You put in your name, an email address, phone number, and then interest. So that's anything that you might be interested in with the city in receiving notifications of funding opportunities or bid opportunities or whatever it is. So you fill that out. And then the next thing that will happen after you hit submit, you click that little box and hit submit, then you're going to get an email. And from that email, you can download the application package. So that's, you know, the budget, the NOFA solicitation, all the attachments, everything you need. And also on the Beacon Bid, we'll have our letters of clarification as they come through. So our letter of clarifications will be any questions that are answered related to the NOFA or any changes to the NOFA. It will all be on that Beacon Bid side. And once you get on the interest list, so let's say we have a new letter of clarification and I go and I publish it to Beacon Bid and on our public services landing page, you will get a notification that says, you know, a new document has been added. So getting on the interest list is very important because it keeps you in tune to what's happening with the solicitation. If for some reason it got extended, you would get a notification. So make sure you do that as soon as possible, and you know, you register with Beacon Bid and get on the interest list. From that email, it also has submit your response. And so when you're ready to submit your response, you click that red link, submit response. And here is what I would call like our portal where we're uploading the documents that I and the evaluation committee and the public services team need to see. So the first thing is your contact information. Please make sure that you put contact information that is easily reachable. You know, if you put your CEO's information and, you know, they never check their email or they're going out of town for 2 weeks and they're not going to have access to email, do not put that email. Try to find someone else's email to put there, because when we do threshold review, I will be reaching out to you possibly to ask for more clarification or additional documents or things of that nature. So you need to make sure you have someone who's going to be easily reachable there. Oh, the other thing I was going to say while we're on this slide is that we learned in one of our previous NOFAs that you cannot submit more than one application with one login. So if I'm using my email address, I can only submit one application from my email. Let's say for some reason you have two parts of your organization and those two different entities, I guess, are going to submit applications. You just need to make sure you use two different email addresses, because this is technically a procurement software. So it's used to receiving bids and people wouldn't submit more than one bid, right? So we're using it for a NOFA, but it's technically for, you know, procurement. So this is going to be a little different than maybe some of the other applications you've seen. As you know, Jared and Melody discussed earlier, we're asking you to select which funding source you think most aligns with your proposed project. So here is where you would do that. We have an attachment that shows you like the regulations and the rules associated with each source, as well as in the NOFA, it talks you through each different source. You know, here, if you have questions, ask, and we will answer the best we can before the question deadline. But, you know, just do you're trying to make the best educated selection that you can. But if you feel confused about it, do send a question and we can kind of help you think through that. And then the next question is like, which activity. So there's two different things here, right? You have your funding source, and then you have the activity within that funding source. So again, you complete those, and that lets us know, hey, these folks are interested in this pot of money, and the totals of each funding source are listed in the NOFA as well. And then we move into your threshold requirements. And so for every threshold requirement, you're going to be asked to submit supporting documents. So I recommend that you look through this list ahead of time so you know what documents are going to be needed. There's also a application checklist that is included with the NOFA, and it should be almost identical to what you see here. So that checklist will also tell you all the documents. But to me, I would also want to just peruse beacon bit to see what are they going to ask me, because if you get to the very last day and you're trying to submit it and you're not expecting a question here and it says response required, like it's not going to let you keep going until you like answer this question and upload a document there. So you just want to make sure that when you go to submit, you have everything ready. The next section will be your application documents. So what I think of these documents is like your bread and butter of your application. This is what the scoring committee is going to be looking at when they evaluate. And I think that Melody and Jared alluded to this earlier, but the scoring committee is like, they probably won't know you, right? They may or may not have some like knowledge of your organization, but you should assume they don't, and that everything you want them to know about you, you're putting here, because they're going to see on their end, they're going to see these documents titled exactly how they are on this page right here. And that's what they're going to see when they're scoring. So I think being explicit in your responses and saying exactly what it is that you're doing is very important, because it helps them score and it makes it easier on them, but also it improves your score, you know, if they are clearly able to see what it is you're doing and stating. And then also the required forms. That's just the forms that we require here at the City of Houston. Then once you complete that, you'll hit submit. The system is good that it actually lets you keep going back all the way up until that 5 p.m. due date and timeline or deadline. So if you put all the information in and you want to go back and edit, you can do that, which is nice. Our previous system didn't allow you to do that. So you can go back in and edit all the way up until the due date. Some application tips. Start early and do not wait until the last minute. I've had this happen to me several times where someone emails me or calls me at like 5:05 and it was due at 5. There's nothing I can do. Like the system locks at 5. So while I do empathize sometimes with people because things happen, but there's literally nothing I can do after 5 p.m. So I would not start at even 4:45. If it were me, I would start at like 3, putting my information in to make sure that I made that 5 p.m. deadline. Because like I said, even if you're in process, let's say you started at 4:40 and you've got all your documents in, but all of a sudden it turns 5:01, it will not let you submit. So just don't put yourself in that situation, because you put a lot of effort into the application. So we want you to be successful in your submission. I've already talked about you can review before your final submission. Correct file formats. The budget needs to be in both Excel and then assigned PDF, but everything else should be in PDF. I can't think of another document that would not be in one of those two formats. I think it makes life easier for the evaluators too if everything's in PDF, and also it's just good practice to not submit something in a Word document, right? It's easily editable. If you're submitting a formal application, it should be in a PDF. And as I stated, only one application can be submitted per login. So in the NOFA, it has the scoring clearly laid out. It also has the, what type of submission would get the highest points also clearly laid out. Please read that very carefully and go through each one and make sure you feel like you've presented your case to get the highest score. Yeah. Make sure you have all your threshold documents. You don't want to get, knocked out before you even get to evaluation. So we do provide usually, and this is not guaranteed, so I don't want anyone to think that this is just always going to be a given, but usually we provide anywhere from a 2 to 3 business day cure period. Now the cure period is only for non-material items, like that means like things that don't impact your score. So in my mind, the threshold would be an example of that. If I look through your threshold documents and something doesn't make sense to me, or I'm not able to see if you meet it based on what I saw you submitted, I will reach out to you and say, hey, within 2 days, can you please provide additional documentation here so that I can verify you meet the threshold document? What I won't allow you to cure, or, this, not just me, like HCD in general won't allow you to cure, is, let's say, your organizational management narrative. If it's only, one paragraph and I can see that it's probably not going to score very well, I'm not going to allow you to cure that, right? Like, that's your application that you submitted. So the cure period is really for, maybe you forgot to sign a form, or maybe you were missing, one of the threshold documents didn't have everything I needed. That's what we mean by the cure period. And then stick to the point, be clear and concise, avoid unnecessary content. Again, just imagine your evaluators, sometimes we get a lot of submissions and they have full-time, jobs here. So they're doing this, in addition to their jobs, and they're trying to get through all this information. So if it were me and I were submitting application, I'd want to say as much as I could in as like the most concise way that I could. That way it's easy for them to score. They can clearly see, that you've met that scoring criteria or exceeded at that scoring criteria. And then lastly, review any letters of clarification before you submit. Letters of clarification are part of the NOFA solicitation. So you will be held to anything in those letters of clarification. And sometimes they contain very important information, like something may change on our end, and that's our only way of communicating with you. So do read those before you submit. The final thing I want to talk about is the no contact period. And this has come up a lot lately, so I'll kind of slow down and talk this through. So basically what the no contact period is that applicants and their representatives, so anybody who works at your organization, or even like your family member who tried to reach out on your behalf, should not attempt to influence the award decision. You cannot provide gifts, favors, anything of value to the city officials or employees. And all questions must be directed only to the city representative listed in the NOFA. In this case, that is me. And I have an email that I prefer you send all the questions to so I can track them and monitor them. That is hcd_NOFA@houstontx.gov. And I'll put that in the chat. So all questions go there. And then if I don't know the answer to the question, I reach out to Melody and Jared and their team and get the question answered for you. Or sometimes it's not them. Maybe it's a compliance question and I reach out to Lakeisha. But either way, that is like the central point for all the questions. I know that sometimes you may feel more comfortable with your relationship manager if you already have funding with us, or you maybe know somebody here and that's who you want to ask. And I understand that, but it just is a violation of the no contact period, or it could be perceived as one. Maybe you're doing it harmlessly, but in terms of transparency, we'd like everything to go to one email address so that there's no interpretation that you were trying to influence the outcome of the award.
And Lindsay, I will add, we've advised all our relationship managers, questions about your current projects that you have with the city are fine. Anything that's related to the NOFA, they've been instructed to either, tell you to go to the website to find out more information, or to reach out to Lindsay through the, contact methods she stated, primarily the email address. So they're just going to say, I can't answer that, and move and direct you to Lindsay.
Yeah, good point, Jared. I forgot about that. You can, of course, contact HCD staff about other projects. You may have, like he said, funding from and a relationship manager for a different project. You can still contact them about that. It's just this NOFA anything about this NOFA would go to the HCD_NOFA email address. So the no contact period begins when we issue the NOFA and it ends when the award goes to council. So it's kind of a long period. So I think sometimes we'll forget that we're still in the no contact period, and I understand that. And so if you get an email, sometimes I'll send an email and say, I'm sorry, but can you please address this? This is actually a violation of the no contact period. And I'll get a response like, oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be in trouble. I'm like, no, you're not in trouble. I'm just letting you know. It may sound like you're in trouble, but that's not how I intend it. It's just to let you know that, hey, you need to send these emails to HCD_NOFA. Applicants and their representatives may not contact any appointed or elected city official or employee, their families, their staff, to influence the award or gain unfair advantage. And I put a note because this includes your council member. I don't think it was for public services NOFA, but for some other NOFAs, we've had applicants who reached out to their council member. I think innocently enough, because they want to let their council member know that they're going to be doing this service or offering this service or building this development in their district. And that's fine outside of the quiet period. But when we're in and I'm using those terms interchangeably, no contact or quiet period, same thing. When we're in this period, you shouldn't be reaching out to your council member. You should save that for when we go to city council, which is my next slide, that applicants may make public statements at city council or city council meetings after the official selection has been made and placed on the agenda. And there's that email right there, the HCD_NOFA@HoustonTX.gov. Oh, sorry. All right. Any questions or comments? I think there were some in the chat. I don't know if they've been answered or not.
Yeah, I think we answered. I think Jared answered most of them. And I know the last question that I'm seeing is the anticipated start date, and that's going to be fluid depending on the applicant itself. So if an applicant currently has a project and they are deemed to be awarded, then we will look at the expiration of their current contract to see when we go back to city council and when the next funding piece starts. And so it's not a hard date. I think we're looking potentially at the end of this year, first quarter of next year. All right. I think Sarah has her hand raised.
Yes. Y'all have answered most of my questions, but with regards to, is there any limit to the number of applications that one umbrella entity can submit?
Lindsay, I think that's more you.
No, not that I can think of. No, we do have sometimes entities submit more than one application if they're for two different programs. Yeah, they can do that. But like I said, you need to use two different logins and be committed.
Okay, thank you.
One question came in, can an organization apply for two funding sources? For example, provide emergency shelter under ESG and transportation services under CDBG? Absolutely. We call that braiding funds. And if you have experienced any programs under my leadership, then you know that I quite often braid funds to make a complete whole project. Can you explain or elaborate on the note on page 7 of the NOFA that says the city is looking to consolidate all homeless prevention services under one provider? Yes, so we have several different providers that provide homeless prevention services. We are interested in providing, looking at one entity to provide those services for the city of Houston. So that's what that means. Any other questions? You can raise your hand, use the raise the hand feature. Mercedes just asked for the 3 months of reserves. If an agency plans to use a line of credit, does the board certify instead of bank statements? What documentation suffices for 3 months cash flow reserve? So there are several different methods you can use for the cash flow reserve. A line of credit is one of them. The board will need to certify whichever method you're trying to use.
And to elaborate on that, the line of credit, we would need to see the documentation that is approving from the bank or whoever has issued that line of credit.
Can I say one thing about that too? If you're using the bank statements, just make sure that you're providing the 3 most recent months, because oftentimes I see people just providing 1 month. So it needs to be like the average of the 3 most recent months.
And then I'm going to probably say your name wrong. Najima Alexander, you have your hand raised.
Hi, it's Najma, but it's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So for funding, can it only be used for new projects or can it be used for capacity building towards current activities or established projects that we may already have?
It can be for any project.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the criteria for CDBG is normally it needs to be a new or an expansion of an existing project, but that's primarily we look at it on the government side. If it's something we haven't been funding, then that shouldn't be an issue.
Correct. We would, if we haven't funded the project before, we would just consider it a new project.
Gotcha. And I guess that would go towards that experience and past performance.
Well, even the experience and past performance. So if we've never funded a project, right, but this is a project that's been in existence for 3 years, let's say, and you're trying to utilize our funds to help expand that, then you're going to put your information as to the past performance, why how you'll be able to answer those questions on what's happening. If it's a very brand new, this is a great idea, it's going to be a different way in terms of how you answer your past performance.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Catherine?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
So we're a current.
You just went on mute.
We're a current grantee, so if we're applying again, would we be under our current agreement until you said like January, or when will these renew?
Yeah, if you're currently funded and you're applying and should you be awarded, then the new funds would probably hit once your termination hits of your current agreement.
So it'd be specific to our agreement rather than.
Correct. Was that it? Yes, I think so. Okay. Let's see. There's a question here, which I don't know. Oh, okay, so on page 27, shall comply with restrictions on the provisions of benefits to newly legalized aliens. What is the definition of newly legalized aliens? I'm not sure what page 27 says, but I will talk about our addendum 1. So all entitlement grants, all federal funds have what is called an addendum 1 to the grant agreement with the city of Houston. This is where the city of Houston is obligated to verify citizenship or permanent residency status of anyone and everyone who is benefiting from federal funds. And so every entity will have to verify their beneficiaries. And so if you're serving somebody, let's say, a head of household person, and there's 4 people that live in that household, and because you are going to be doing income verification, so you will have to verify that all 4 of those individuals that are in that household have legal status in the United States. There are ways to do that. There is a system you can input information into. There's other systems, and if you're a current funded project, you've already talked to us. You can have those conversations once awarded, but do note that it is a requirement when you receive these funds to verify eligibility of legal status in the United States. And the questions keep moving, so let me go back. Okay, so we talked about the citizenship piece, and then do we email to set up a project concept meeting to see what programs are available? No. The NOFA has everything. If I understand the question correctly, the NOFA is explaining everything that is available. And so a project concept meeting would be something that typically agencies do way before NOFA is released. So we're not able to talk about a project, how to build it, what's the best suited for this particular funding stream. We are now in the quiet period or the blackout period. When serving people with IDD, can their parents and caregivers be served? So I don't know exactly that question. It would, I guess it would depend on your program. And again, you are, when you think about your beneficiaries, are they eligible? Do they meet the income requirements? Because if you're serving somebody and you're trying to verify them as a national, to conform to the national objective, the IDD beneficiary itself, that person is eligible based on their diagnosis, but their parents wouldn't. So you'd have to look at their income restriction and see, are they eligible for these funds? And so it would really depend on your program. So I can't really answer that just based on that question alone.
Yeah, I'll add that, yeah, that's going to be your program design. Are you looking at the client as individuals, or are you going to be evaluating the household? Because then you're going to have to take in the entire household composition and income, as well as if we're now looking at household and they are beneficiaries, you will also, all members of the household have to meet the SAVE requirements and eligibility. So you would need documentation on all of them.
Yeah, the next question is, does the city have certain projects in mind that will receive higher prioritization for recommendation? I mean, the NOFA has laid it out completely. And so there, we have essentially two areas of eligibility. Are you reading and assisting with the mayor's plan to end homelessness, or are you a provider of IDD? So then based on what is submitted and how it is scored will determine prioritization. I don't believe, Jared, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have any other criteria that we're giving extra points for?
No, I don't believe so. We've just stated those are the two types of projects that we're looking for prioritizing with this NOFA.
If you're looking at a renewal and a new project, yes, you would have to submit 2 applications. And then Catherine, do you have another question?
No, I don't have a question.
Okay, okay.
And I wanted to call attention to one of the questions that we partially answered from, I believe it was Renee earlier. And Lindsay, she also asked, is the final scoring of the application available to the applicants?
Oh, I think I missed that question. So yes, everything is available as a public record. We don't give it out. Like if you ask, I'm not just going to send it. What you do is you go through and you submit a Texas Public Information Act request that goes to our communications team. Then they, we give what you ask, and then that goes to legal determines if we're allowed to release that. So there's a little bit of a process there, but yes, you can request it through the TPIA.
All right, any other questions? All right, I don't see any more questions. Lindsay, you want to close this out?
Sure. Thank you for all coming, and I hope that we answered your questions. If we don't, I put the email in the chat box or the chat there. So just send all your questions, and we'll get them answered for you. So I appreciate you all being here.